What if one simple thing hiding in your kitchen could completely change the way your body ages after 60? Not a miracle pill. Not some expensive treatment celebrities are secretly flying overseas to get. Just a strange little oil that researchers say may influence fat loss, energy levels, muscle preservation, and even the environment cancer cells rely on to survive. Because here's the frightening part most people never hear. After 60, your body doesn't just slow down. It begins entering a chain reaction. Your energy production drops, your repair systems weaken, and your metabolism quietly shifts into a state that can make disease far more likely. That's why so many people suddenly struggle with stubborn belly fat, exhaustion, brain fog, and declining strength even when they're trying to stay healthy. But new research is raising eyebrows across the medical world. Scientists studying longevity, metabolism, and cellular aging discovered that one daily habit may activate multiple anti-aging pathways at the same time. And surprisingly, millions of older adults are already drinking half of the formula every single morning without realizing it. What happened when researchers combined it with coffee shocked even them. Most people think aging happens slowly and evenly, but researchers discovered that after 60, 3 specific biological systems begin declining at the same time, and together they create the perfect storm for fatigue, weight gain, weakness, and disease. The first problem starts inside your cells. Your mitochondria are responsible for producing energy. Every heartbeat, every muscle movement, every thought in your brain depends on them. But by your 60s, mitochondrial density can fall dramatically. Some studies suggest older adults may lose nearly half of their mitochondrial efficiency compared to their younger years. That's why simple tasks suddenly feel exhausting. Stairs become harder. Recovery takes longer. Even waking up in the morning can feel like dragging yourself through wet cement. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. The second issue is something most people have never even heard about: stem cell depletion. Stem cells are basically your body's repair crew. They help rebuild tissue, repair muscles, maintain organs, and replace damaged cells. When you're younger, your body constantly renews itself behind the scenes. You barely notice it happening. After 60, that repair system slows down hard. Researchers found that stem cell activity declines sharply with age, which means your body becomes slower at fixing damage before problems begin stacking up. Small injuries linger longer. Inflammation hangs around. Cells accumulate wear and tear faster than your body can clean it up. And then comes the third problem. Your metabolism begins shifting toward glucose dependency. In simple terms, your body becomes less flexible at burning fat for fuel. Instead, it starts relying more heavily on sugar. That's bad news because high glucose environments are strongly linked to inflammation, insulin resistance, and metabolic dysfunction. And here's where things get unsettling. Some researchers studying cancer metabolism noticed that many abnormal cells thrive in glucose-heavy environments. That doesn't mean sugar directly causes cancer, despite what social media claims. But studies do suggest that chronically elevated glucose and insulin may create conditions that unhealthy cells prefer. That's why scientists became obsessed with one question. What if there was a way to support energy production, protect stem cell function, and shift metabolism away from constant glucose dependence at the same time? That search led researchers toward one unusual compound hidden inside a very specific kind of fat. And the results caught almost everyone off guard. When most people hear the word fat, they immediately think weight gain. But scientists discovered that not all fats behave the same way inside the human body, and one type seemed to break nearly every rule nutrition experts had taught for decades. It's called MCT oil. Short for medium-chain triglycerides, MCTs are fats naturally found in coconut oil and certain dairy products. But unlike the long-chain fats in most foods, these molecules take a completely different route once they enter your body. Normally, dietary fat moves slowly through digestion. It gets packaged, stored, and often ends up sitting in fat tissue around your stomach and organs. But MCTs bypass much of that process. They head straight to the liver, where they're rapidly converted into molecules called ketones. That's where things get interesting. Ketones are often associated with fasting or ketogenic diets, but researchers discovered something unusual about MCT oil. It can raise ketone levels even when someone isn't fasting and even when they still eat carbohydrates. That made scientists pay attention fast, because ketones aren't just an energy source. They act like signaling molecules that influence multiple systems linked to aging. Researchers began noticing effects on fat burning, inflammation, brain function, and even cellular repair pathways. But one specific version of MCT oil stood above the rest: C8, also known as caprylic acid. Researchers found that C8 converts into ketones faster and more efficiently than other MCT forms. That means the body can enter a mild ketone-producing state surprisingly quickly, sometimes within minutes after consumption. And according to several metabolic studies, that shift changes the body's fuel preference almost immediately. Instead of constantly chasing glucose for energy, cells begin increasing fat oxidation. In plain English, your body starts becoming better at burning fat instead of storing it. One study comparing MCT oil to olive oil found participants using MCTs lost more visceral fat, the dangerous fat packed around internal organs. That's the same type of fat strongly associated with metabolic disease, inflammation, and declining health after 60. But the fat loss wasn't even the most shocking discovery. Researchers measuring cellular activity noticed something else happening beneath the surface. The ketones produced from C8-MCT oil appeared to influence the body's mitochondrial pathways directly. In other words, the very energy systems that decline with age suddenly showed signs of waking back up. And what happened next may explain why so many older adults describe feeling mentally sharper and physically younger within weeks of starting the routine. The biggest surprise in the research wasn't the fat loss, it was the energy. For decades, scientists believed age-related mitochondrial decline was mostly irreversible. Exercise could slow it down a little. Healthy eating might help somewhat. But once your cellular energy system started fading, the assumption was that decline was inevitable. Then researchers started studying what ketones were doing inside the cell, and the findings became impossible to ignore. When the body produces ketones from C8-MCT oil, it activates pathways linked to mitochondrial biogenesis. That's the process where your cells actually create new mitochondria and improve the performance of existing ones. Think about that for a second. The tiny energy factories that power your muscles, brain, heart, and immune system may not just be aging out. Under the right conditions, your body may still have the ability to rebuild and strengthen them. That idea completely changed the conversation around aging metabolism. In several studies, researchers observed increased expression of a protein called PGC1-alpha after MCT supplementation. This protein is sometimes called the master switch for mitochondrial growth because it tells cells to produce more energy-generating machinery. And participants didn't just show changes on paper. Many experienced measurable improvements in stamina, physical performance, and mental clarity. That mental effect especially caught researchers off guard because your brain consumes massive amounts of energy every single day, and aging brains often struggle with glucose metabolism long before memory problems become obvious. Some scientists now believe this energy deficit may contribute to brain fog and cognitive decline. Ketones appear to offer the brain an alternative fuel source. That's why many older adults report something strange after adding MCT oil to their morning coffee. They describe feeling awake again, not jittery like caffeine overload, more like steady mental clarity they haven't felt in years, sharper focus, better concentration, less afternoon crashing. And some researchers believe there's another reason for that. Ketones may also influence inflammation and oxidative stress inside the brain itself. Early studies suggest they could help support healthier neuronal function by reducing some of the metabolic strain linked to aging. But the most fascinating discovery involved stem cells. Scientists studying longevity pathways noticed that ketones appeared to help maintain stem cells in a more protected, stable state. In simple terms, the body's repair crew may function better when ketone levels rise consistently. That matters because aging isn't just about damage happening faster, it's also about repair happening slower. And according to emerging research, ketones may influence both sides of that equation at the same time. But there was one area where the science became especially controversial. Because when researchers started connecting ketones to cancer metabolism, the debate exploded almost overnight. This is the part of the story where things become controversial. For years, scientists studying cancer focused almost entirely on genetics. The belief was simple: cancer develops because of damaged DNA and uncontrollable cell mutations. But a growing group of researchers began asking a different question. What if metabolism plays a much bigger role than anyone realized? That idea traces back nearly a century to researcher Otto Warburg, who noticed something unusual about cancer cells. Unlike healthy cells, many cancer cells consume enormous amounts of glucose and rely heavily on a fast, inefficient energy process called glycolysis, even when oxygen is available. This became known as the Warburg effect. At the time, most scientists viewed it as an interesting side effect of cancer, but modern researchers started wondering if it might actually be one of cancer's biggest weaknesses. Because healthy cells are metabolically flexible, they can use glucose, they can use fat, and under certain conditions, they can use ketones very efficiently. Many cancer cells appear far less adaptable. That's why scientists became interested in metabolic therapies that reduce glucose availability while increasing ketone production. The theory is that healthy cells may continue functioning normally while abnormal cells experience metabolic stress. Now, to be extremely clear, this does not mean MCT oil cures cancer. There's a huge difference between laboratory findings, animal studies, and proven human treatments, and anyone claiming otherwise is oversimplifying the science. But researchers are actively studying whether mild nutritional ketosis may help create a less favorable environment for certain disease processes. And the early findings sparked enormous attention. Some studies observed reduced inflammatory markers, lower fasting insulin levels, and improved metabolic health in people maintaining higher ketone levels. Others explored how ketogenic strategies may interact alongside traditional therapies. Reports from experimental research suggested certain tumors struggled in lower glucose environments, though scientists continue debating how broadly that applies across different cancer types. That debate is still ongoing, but one thing researchers increasingly agree on is this: chronically elevated glucose, insulin resistance, visceral fat accumulation, and metabolic dysfunction are deeply connected to poor aging outcomes. And that's exactly where MCT oil appeared most promising, because the goal isn't simply fighting disease, it's improving the entire metabolic environment your body operates in every single day. Lower inflammation, better insulin sensitivity, more efficient mitochondria, reduced visceral fat, improved energy production. Those are the same systems linked not just to longevity, but also to strength, independence, and quality of life after 60. And that's when researchers uncovered another unexpected effect nobody saw coming. The people using MCT oil weren't just losing fat, some were preserving and even gaining muscle at the same time. One of the biggest fears people have after 60 isn't just gaining weight, it's becoming weak. Because muscle loss changes everything. It affects balance, mobility, metabolism, immune health, and even survival rates during illness. Researchers now consider muscle mass one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging. And here's the problem most people don't realize. After 50, the body naturally starts breaking down muscle faster than it rebuilds it. This process, known as sarcopenia, accelerates with each decade. That's why so many older adults feel softer, weaker, and more fragile even when their body weight hasn't changed much. But the really frustrating part comes during weight loss. Most diets cause people to lose muscle alongside fat. In fact, many older adults who aggressively diet end up slowing their metabolism even further because their bodies burn through valuable muscle tissue during calorie restriction. That's where MCT oil completely surprised researchers. Several studies found that ketone production may help protect muscle during fat loss. Instead of the body tearing down muscle for emergency fuel, ketones provide an alternative energy source that appears to reduce muscle breakdown. And the mechanism behind it is fascinating. When ketone levels rise, the body receives signals that energy is available. That reduces the need to convert amino acids from muscle into glucose. In simple terms, your body becomes less likely to cannibalize its own muscle tissue while burning fat. But that wasn't the only discovery. Researchers also noticed ketones may influence a major muscle-building pathway called mTOR. Normally, mTOR activation is closely linked to insulin spikes, which can also encourage fat storage. Ketones appear to interact with this pathway differently, helping support muscle maintenance without the same glucose-heavy metabolic environment. That caught scientists completely off guard. In one study involving older adults with age-related muscle decline, participants using MCT oil while following a calorie-controlled program lost more body fat while preserving significantly more lean muscle compared to the control group. Some even gained lean mass. That's extremely unusual after 60, because conventional wisdom says losing fat and building muscle at the same time becomes incredibly difficult with age. Yet researchers kept seeing signs that ketones may help shift that equation. And there's another reason this matters. Muscle tissue plays a huge role in metabolic health. The more healthy muscle you maintain, the better your body handles glucose, energy regulation, and insulin sensitivity. That means preserving muscle doesn't just help you stay strong. It may also improve the very metabolic systems linked to aging itself. That's why many researchers now view strength training as one of the most important companions to MCT supplementation. But the final discovery explained why this entire routine exploded online so quickly. Because when scientists combined MCT oil with caffeine, the metabolic effects became dramatically stronger than either one alone. Coffee alone already affects metabolism. Caffeine stimulates the nervous system, increases alertness, and temporarily boosts fat burning by helping release stored fat from fat cells into the bloodstream. That's one reason coffee became so popular in fitness and weight loss circles. But researchers noticed a major problem. Releasing fat and actually burning fat are two completely different things. If the body doesn't immediately use that released energy, much of it simply gets stored again later. That's why caffeine by itself often produces inconsistent long-term results. The body mobilizes fuel, but there isn't always enough metabolic demand to fully use it. That's where MCT oil changed the equation. When C8-MCT oil converts into ketones, the body suddenly increases demand for fat-based fuel. Now you have two systems working together at the same time. Caffeine helps release stored fat, while ketones encourage the body to burn fat more efficiently for energy. Researchers studying the combination found the effect appeared far stronger than either ingredient alone. And people noticed it quickly. Many older adults described steady energy without the harsh spikes and crashes that normally come with caffeine. Instead of feeling wired for an hour and exhausted afterward, they experienced longer-lasting mental clarity and appetite control throughout the morning. That appetite effect became one of the biggest reasons the trend exploded online. Because ketones appear to influence hunger hormones directly, many people naturally begin delaying breakfast without forcing themselves to diet. They simply stop feeling constantly hungry. This created an unexpected metabolic window researchers became fascinated by. During the overnight fast, insulin levels naturally drop. Then, when someone drinks coffee blended with C8-MCT oil first thing in the morning, ketone levels rise even further while glucose stays relatively low. According to metabolic researchers, this may create ideal conditions for fat oxidation and cellular repair pathways. That's why timing became such a huge part of the protocol. Many experts now recommend consuming MCT coffee within the first hour after waking before eating other foods. Some then wait another 2 to 4 hours before their first meal, allowing the body to remain in a mild fat-burning state longer. And surprisingly, many people report this feels easier than traditional fasting. The combination of caffeine and ketones often produces enough satiety that hunger becomes far less aggressive. Instead of constantly thinking about food, people describe stable energy and focus throughout the morning. But researchers warned there was a major mistake ruining results for thousands of people. Most were buying the wrong type of MCT oil entirely, and according to experts, that one mistake may completely change the metabolic effects people experience. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. A lot of people try MCT oil once, feel disappointed, and quit before they ever experience the real effects. Not because the research was wrong, but because they were using the wrong product, taking the wrong dose, or using it in a way that completely blunted the metabolic response. And according to experts, one mistake stands above all the others: buying low-quality MCT oil. Most cheap MCT products are packed with lower-grade fatty acids that don't convert into ketones efficiently. Some are diluted with ingredients that behave more like ordinary fats inside the body. Others contain mostly lauric acid, which metabolizes much slower and doesn't produce the same rapid ketone response researchers observed with pure C8. That's why metabolic specialists became obsessed with one phrase on the label: C8 caprylic acid. The higher the C8 concentration, the faster and stronger the ketone production tends to be. And according to many experts, that difference can completely change the experience. But even with the right product, another mistake causes problems fast: taking too much too soon. This is where many people get blindsided, because MCT oil moves rapidly through the digestive system. If someone jumps straight into large doses, the body often reacts badly. Stomach cramps, nausea, and digestive issues are extremely common among beginners who overdo it on day 1. Researchers and nutrition experts typically recommend starting slowly, often just 1 teaspoon in the morning for several days before gradually increasing, and then comes the mistake that sounds minor but actually matters a lot: not blending it properly. Most people simply pour oil into coffee and stir it for 2 seconds, but that leaves the oil floating unevenly on the surface, which affects texture, digestion, and absorption. Experts recommend blending or frothing it until it becomes creamy and fully emulsified. That's why the drink became known online as fat coffee. Not because it tastes oily, but because when prepared correctly, it develops a smooth texture almost like a latte. Some people also add grass-fed butter or ghee, which provides additional fats that may extend satiety and ketone production even longer, though researchers note the core effects still appear tied primarily to the C8 MCT itself. Then there's the timing issue. Many people drink MCT coffee alongside a heavy breakfast packed with sugar and refined carbohydrates. According to metabolic researchers, that may sharply reduce ketone production because insulin levels rise quickly once high-carb foods enter the system. That's why many protocols recommend consuming it during a fasted state instead. And here's something else people rarely expect. The first benefits usually aren't physical. Most people notice mental clarity before visible fat loss. In the first week or two, many report steadier energy, less morning brain fog, and reduced cravings. The body composition changes often come later as mitochondrial activity and fat oxidation pathways begin adapting. But perhaps the biggest reason people stick with the routine has nothing to do with appearance at all. It's the feeling of waking up with stable energy again, feeling mentally sharp, feeling physically capable, feeling like their body is working with them instead of against them. And for many older adults, that's the part that feels almost unbelievable. What makes this entire story so fascinating is that it challenges the way most people think about aging. For years, many assumed exhaustion, weight gain, brain fog, and muscle loss were simply unavoidable after 60. That the body naturally breaks down and there's very little anyone can do about it. But the research emerging around ketones, mitochondrial health, and metabolic flexibility suggests something very different. Your body may still be far more adaptable than people realize, not because of some miracle shortcut. Not because one ingredient magically reverses aging, but because certain daily habits appear capable of influencing the exact systems that decline most aggressively later in life. That's why so many researchers became interested in the combination of C8 MCT oil, fasting windows, resistance training, and metabolic health. Together, they may support energy production, fat oxidation, muscle preservation, and healthier aging pathways in ways scientists are only beginning to fully understand. And perhaps the biggest takeaway is this: small changes repeated consistently often outperform extreme plans people abandon after 2 weeks. One morning routine, one better habit, One decision repeated daily. That's how metabolic health shifts over time. Because aging isn't only about the years passing, it's about what's happening inside your cells while those years pass. And according to the latest research, the body may still have more power to rebuild, adapt, and respond than most people have been led to believe. The real question is how many people will start paying attention before the rest of the world catches on. If you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe now because the next video dives into the fasting research that scientists say may amplify these effects even